Good evening, all. I'm Carolyn Rye, Chair of the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach, and I hereby call this meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. on this 9th day of November 2022. We welcome those who are here with us in person this evening and the viewing public. As always, the public is able to observe this meeting through live streaming on vbschools.com, broadcast on VBTV Channel 47, and on Zoom. With that, Madam Clerk, would you please announce those school board members in attendance?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Present in the school board chambers are Chair Rye, Vice Chair Melnick, Ms. Anderson, Ms. Felton, Ms. Franklin, Ms. Holtz, Ms. Hughes, Ms. Manning, Ms. Riggs, and Ms. Weems, and attending via Zoom is Ms. Owens.
Thank you. So now I ask all those present to please.
Madam Chair, can we go on the record for why Ms. Owens is participating remotely?
Yeah, due to illness.
Thank you.
So now I will ask all those present to join me in a moment of silence. And please stand as you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right, with no recognitions this evening, we'll advance to adoption of the agenda. Colleagues, any modifications? Okay, hearing none, motion to approve. Mrs. Franklin and a second, Mrs. Riggs. All in favor, show a raised hand, please.
Ms. Owens, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have unanimous vote.
Thank you. And our next vote is approval of tonight's meeting minutes for the October 25th, 2022 regular school board meeting. Again, any modifications? All right, hearing none, a motion to approve. Mrs. Felton, and a second, Mrs. Hughes. Okay, all in favor, a raised hand, please.
And
Miss-
I vote yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have unanimous vote.
Thank you. Okay, the school board will now hear public comment on matters relevant to pre-K to 12 public education in Virginia Beach and the business of the school board and the school division from citizens and delegations who signed up with the school board clerk prior to noon today. Speakers are responsible for being in chambers when their name is called to speak, and if not present when called, the school board, at its sole discretion, may allow the speaker to speak at the end of the public comment session. The school board also invites the public to submit comments through our group email account, which can be found on our website. So, Madam Clerk, would you please introduce our first speaker of the evening?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our first speaker will be Emily Labar, then Alex Estrot, and then Charlie Levine.
And welcome.
And I'm the president of First Colonial High School's Gender Sexuality Alliance. The effective date of the 2022 model guidelines has been pushed back until November 26th. Unfortunately, if action is not taken by this board, it seems that we'll only be delaying the inevitable. Counseling services must be available to all students, and all students, including transgender students, must be treated with respect, compassion, and dignity. A basic part of this respect is calling them by their preferred names and pronouns. Other cities and counties have already taken action to reject the 2022 model guidelines, including Fairfax, Richmond, and Arlington County. Arlington drafted a proposed resolution against the 2022 model policies, Richmond created and passed the Transgender Student Protection Resolution, and the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors decided 9-1 that the policies would cause more harm than good. After yesterday, all that's left to do is count the votes. Any concerns about re-election, it's out of everyone's hands now. The worry only lies with what to do now, starting with rejecting these model policies before lives are changed for the worse. By January, whoever the new school board members are, they may not be willing to act. They may not understand the importance of this issue, the importance of keeping all students, including transgender students, safe. With November 26th quickly approaching, I'm asking you to please set a resolution or put it to a vote, and on the November 22nd meeting, do what is right. Don't allow your students to be endangered. Reject the model policies. About a week ago, I had a conversation with my coworker. I was talking about how I was preparing for this meeting. And she asked me, again? I said, yes, again, they're every 2 weeks. She asked me, well, when does it end? When do you get to stop? And I told her, when they do the right thing. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Alex Elstrott, then Charlie Levine, and then Charlie Bodenstein.
Welcome.
Thank you. Hello. My name is Alex Elstrott, and I'm a senior at First Cologne High School. I have been here before speaking out against the Virginia Department of Education's model policy on transgender students, and I'm here again to give another plea. However, this time, I want to speak to the conservative side of the board, rather than the liberal side that we have usually aimed for. This movement is not a referendum on Governor Youngkin or transgenderism. This is merely a plea to take teachers out of the discussion, allow them to choose to respect their students' identities. It should not be the role of the teachers to tell students who they are and who they aren't. It is a job of teachers and faculty to form relationships with their students and educate them. A very simple way to hold that relationship and create a platform to get students to listen to their teachers is to call them by the preferred names and pronouns. This is a simple way to communicate with students and treat them with respect and allow for them to listen to what you need to teach. Furthermore, this is not a liberal versus conservative issue. I am a conservative who has supported and still supports Governor Youngkin. That said, I believe that this administration is misguided when it comes to this policy. This policy is an attempt to live up to the promise that parents should have control over their child's education, and I agree with that sentiment. However, when it comes to this policy, this is not just about the balance of parents' rights against teachers. This is about students' rights. This is about the rights of students to be able to communicate comfortably with their teachers and counselors, and to have a place where they can feel safe, especially if that place is not their home. If this is just a phase as some people believe transgenderism is, then I would like to ask them, whose right is it to decide that? Should teachers and counselors be the ones telling students that their feelings are just a phase? Or should we allow teachers to respect their students and allow them to find their true identity along the way while giving them the respect they deserve? In my opinion, the choice is clear, and that choice requires this board to assure that these model policies will not be in our schools. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Charlie Levine, then Charlie Bodenstein, and then Savannah Newell.
Good evening.
Good evening. The other two people aren't here today, unfortunately, so I'm Savannah Newell. Hello, everyone. Like I said, my name is Savannah Newell, and I am a student at First Colonial High. The last time I was here, I told you that without advocacy, vulnerable people cannot be heard or given credits. Without advocacy, vulnerable people have no power and become invisible. For the past 3, now 4, consecutive school board meetings, you have heard several speeches by multiple students who have dedicated countless hours to preventing the proposed transgender policy from being implemented in Virginia Beach City Public Schools. You have heard troubling statistics related to the disturbing high rates of suicide prevalent amongst transgender and non-binary youth who do not have access to gender-affirming environment. You have heard a handful of accounts by transgender and non-binary students and how the policy would affect them directly. Last meeting, you heard Alex Elstrode identify that the proposed transgender policy is not a political issue, but rather a human rights issue. You heard Emily Labar quote Justice Thurgood Marshall when he said, We can run from each other, but we cannot escape each other. We will only attain freedom if we learn to appreciate what is different and muster the courage to discover what is fundamentally the same. Knock down the fences that divide, tear apart the walls that imprison, reach out. Freedom lies just on the other side. You heard Jacob Cruz advocate for his friends, peers, and every other non-binary or transgender student because they deserve to be respected and they deserve to have their correct pronouns and name used. And you will continue to hear this and much, much more. Because the truth of the matter is, this is a movement, not a moment. The civil rights movement lasted decades. The suffrage movement lasted years, and the LGBTQ equality movement continues to persist. We will continue to fight for our transgender and non-binary students. We just hope you will do the same. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jacob Cruz.
Good evening.
Good evening. Hello, I'm Jacob Cruz. You've heard plenty from myself and my peers in opposition to the model transgender student policies. And honestly, I don't think that there's very much that's left unsaid. You know what the evidence says. We've given you a lot of that. You know what our affected peers say. We've brought a lot of people here. But today, I want us to consider something that is still unknown. What will history have to say about us? In a way, that's what this has all been about for me. Regardless of whether I succeed or fail with my fight against these policies, I want to be able to say that I did everything that I could. I want to be able to say that I want to be able to have a legacy of fighting for those who can't fight for themselves. To me, the cost is simply too great to do anything but that. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I didn't try and do something to change these cruel policies. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night knowing that my friends would soon join the endless wall of heart-wrenching statistics that we've told you time and time again. I ask this board, what do you want your legacy to be? Do you want the students of our schools to remember you as the school board that didn't have the courage to use their power to fight for what's right? Or do you want to be the school board or do you want to be remembered as the school board that in its last breaths still acted in the best interests of the students? You've shepherded us through many trials, COVID, learning loss, failing schools, and many, many more unnamed. Many, many more that we probably don't even know about. In my mind, you've led us very well, but your job is not done. Regardless of who won or lost on Tuesday, you are still our school board, and you will be when these policies inevitably crash down on our schools. I'm thankful that these policies have been delayed a month, but delay is not an end. Just like Emily said, we will not stop until the right thing is done. And you cannot avoid the elephant in the room in hopes that a reshuffled board might handle it for you. I'm not asking you to do anything that I won't do myself. I'm not going to sit on the sidelines and hope that change arrives. None of us are. Next meeting is our last chance before these policies begin, and we will come to this school board with every student we can possibly muster from this city. We will not leave any stone unturned. We took our foot off the gas pedal this week because we felt there wasn't as much to say. Next week, we do not feel the same way, and we will do the exact opposite. I have faith in this board to do the right thing. I've seen them do it before, but I will not stand by and merely hope that the right thing is done. History has its eyes on us. Let's not let it down. Thank you.
Madam Chair, that was our last student speaker, so we will move on. Our next speaker is Quinn Sipes, then Daryl Scott, then David Cutchins.
Good evening.
Good evening. To be as transparent as possible, I'm upset that I have to be here at another school board meeting to defend my students. I'm upset that I had to make the decision to cancel my tutoring session with my students so I could get down here on time to tell you how harmful the VDOE model policy is to our students. I had figured that after hearing countless VBCPS students talk about how the policy proposal would affect not only them, but their peers in a negative way, that the school board would start to act in a way that showed our students that school is their safe place. However, the inaction by this school board has prompted me to be here again. I made the decision to be here instead of improving my students' academics because it's more important that my students feel safe, loved, and understood in the classroom than reinforcing how to make inferences based on textual evidence. The current VDOE model policy will adversely affect students district-wide. Suicidal ideation and depression will be on the rise if this school board decides to uphold this model policy. Couple that with the banning of books that deal with gender identity and other diverse books, and you get a recipe for disaster. I could go into facts and figures at this point in my public comments with trans depression and suicide rates, but facts and figures are cold and impersonal. Instead, you're going to meet my students, the children who I'm here defending because they're too frightened to speak up about this policy. On the first day of school, I give my students an assignment. They are to write a letter to themselves that will act as a time capsule for 2022. One of the questions I ask is, what are you hoping happens to you this year? Some students say they hope they make a sports team or they finally achieve the coveted principals list. One student in my class wrote, I hope that this year my teachers call me by my preferred name all year when I'm in class, and that they won't out me to my parents because I'm not ready. I spoke with that student and assured him that his preferred name will be used only in class. The relief and comfort he felt was almost instantaneous, and I got to watch this student come out of his shell in my class. That student regularly talks in my class and is unafraid to share his thoughts, which is quite the opposite of what my colleagues see. When news of the VDOE model policy broke, that student came to me visibly upset. He asked me, Mr. Sipes, if this policy is approved, does that mean you have to tell my parents about my name? Does that mean I can't trust you anymore? Do any of you understand how
30
gut-wrenching
seconds.
that is? You see a student finally comfortable with themselves step out, and now they immediately shrink back into their own skin. And they're asking if they can't even trust their teachers. If you do nothing, I'm telling you now, if you do nothing, you will be directly responsible for the suicide rate and depression rate among students in this district.
Our next speaker is Daryl Scott, then David Cutchins, and then Glacier Simpson.
Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Daryl Scott, Virginia Beach. I've had 2 sons and several grandchildren attending Virginia Beach public schools. I'm asking you to pass a policy as directed by law, not a resolution, but an actual policy that fully aligns with the Senate Bill 656, which is the parental rights law signed into law by the governor 2022. We ask the school board to take action immediately to develop a policy that's consistent with the model policies developed by the Virginia Department of Education in compliance with this law. Policy should, at a minimum, include clear definitions of what constitutes sexually explicit materials, make it clear that school officials must compile a list of all materials that fall in this questionable purview, give parents plenty of advance notice and a reasonable opportunity and period of time to review this list and materials. Recognize parents' rights to receive alternative material assignments for their child in a way that does not result in singling out or ostracizing the child. Parental authority is a constitutional right as recognized by the Supreme Court multiple times and upheld in Virginia law.
Our next speaker is David Cutchins, then Glacier Simpson, and speaker number 5 had to cancel.
Welcome.
Good evening. My name is David Cutchins. My wife and I have lived in Kempsville for the past 8 years and in Virginia for most of our lives. I'm a graduate of the Chesterfield County school system. She graduated from Henrico County Schools and our daughter from Hanover County. We value and have benefited from our public education. We have 4 undergraduate and 2 graduate degrees between the 3 of us. It's been quite a benefit to our lives, and I'm very proud of our public education. My public school education allowed me to attend and graduate from the Citadel and then serve my country as a naval officer because of the skills I got from my public education before going on to successfully be a successful career in corporate business. My public schooling achieved its intended purpose of giving me a sound knowledge base about the fact of the physical world and the history of our civilization. School taught me about the world, but my parents taught me about life. Those are the fundamental roles of each, the roles that are necessary for developing our children well and allowing them to become who their Creator meant them to be. Schools provide knowledge, the home provides and shapes our character. But it's become clear that the direction of our public education has changed dramatically over the past decade and more. You, the Virginia Beach School Board, are currently spending more of our money per student than you ever have before, but the results as measured by test scores and workforce viability are declining to the detriment of all of us. In my last decade as a corporate executive in Richmond and then in Norfolk, the corporations that I worked for were becoming increasingly handicapped by the declining availability of employees who had both the knowledge and the willingness to be reliable contributors. There's something wrong with this picture. Instead of public education being education provided by the government, we now have a government education and a system which is not reliably producing contributing citizens. America has a legacy of patriots, meaning people who are willing to stand up for individual freedom in the face of government overreach. A government school system that inserts itself between the child and the parents is overreaching. We are still patriots, and we are here to urge you, the Virginia Beach School Board, to correct this course. There are two specific requests we are here to make of you tonight. On
30
September
seconds.
13th, the board passed a resolution declaring that families will continue to be equal partners with you in decisions impacting their children, and that they would be empowered to advocate for their children. We're asking you tonight to correct this oversight by striking the equal partners and empower clauses from your resolution. Your resolution otherwise acknowledges the American principle that parents and family members are the first and most important teachers in their children's lives. But you need to correct that contradiction in your resolution.
And that is time. Our next speaker is Glacier Simpson. Ms. Simpson? Okay. Madam Chair, that was our last speaker for this evening.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So that brings us to the information portion of the meeting, and we are beginning with a presentation on some new course proposals. So welcome, Ms. Siders.
Siders, yes,
Okay.
yes. Good evening, Chairwoman Rye, Vice Chairwoman Melnick, members of the board, and Dr. Spence. I'm here this evening to provide you with information regarding the addition of new course proposals at the secondary level, and I'm excited to share them with you tonight.
The presentation is not there.
Sorry, okay.
Oh, with the
Just
screen.
one.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Tonight's presentation focuses on adding course offerings for the secondary students, as well as adding technical and career education offerings in our secondary schools. As you view the slide, you see 7 new course proposals: MYP Physics, IBDP, Sports, Exercise, and Health Science, AP Physics C, Electricity and Magnetism, Honors World History and Geography 1, AP Pre-Calculus, Foundations of Police Science, Renewable Energy 1 and 2. Enhancing offerings and course selection opens opportunities for students and creates new pathways. In the International Baccalaureate, which I refer to as IB, and the Middle Years Program, which I'll refer to sometimes as MYP, Academy at Princess Anne High School, 2 new courses are being proposed to provide new pathways to ensure that students are prepared for post-secondary. MYP Physics is proposed for approval. For the past 10 years, the International Baccalaureate Program at Princess Anne High School has offered 2 MYP courses, biology and chemistry, before entering into the diploma program. MYP Physics will serve as an additional pathway into the diploma program. Historically, students, depending on future career goals, have gravitated to biology and chemistry in this program. However, over the past 5 years, there has been an increase of students interested in pursuing an engineering degree post-high school. As a result, a new pathway is being recommended, with physics as the core science. The course centers on the study of matter and energy and their interactions and its relevance to the world. The DP Sports, Exercise, and Health Science course is geared to students who desire to pursue a career in healthcare. This course will provide an opportunity to acquire the knowledge and understanding necessary to apply scientific principles and critically analyze human performance. The course incorporates the traditional disciplines of anatomy, physiology, biomechanics, psychology, and nutrition. Students cover a range of topics and carry out practical, experimental investigations in both laboratory and field settings. AP Physics C, Electricity and Magnetism, is also proposed for approval. This calculus-based course follows the coursework as set forth by College Board's Advanced Placement Program, and it explores concepts like change, force interactions, fields, and conservation. This course can be paired with AP Physics Mechanics. Virginia Beach City Public Schools has previously offered AP Physics C Mechanics as a year-long course, but our flexible scheduling model now provides flexibility for our students to schedule this course and obtain a weighted credit for the course. In social studies, the proposal to offer honors world history course and geography expands the pathway supporting future-ready students. This course follows the pre-AP framework and prepares students for the rigor of advanced placement courses. This course prioritizes the skills fundamental to the study of history and geography and gives students multiple opportunities to think and work like historians and geographers as they develop and strengthen these disciplinary reasoning skills, such as evaluating evidence, explaining historical and geographical relationships, and incorporating evidence. Students will also be provided free online practice and videos through AP Classroom to meet the needs where they are to prepare them for the future. These materials are available from College Board. AP Pre-Calculus is a new course to prepare students for the rigors of a college-level calculus course. This course will benefit both students and teachers by providing additional opportunity for students to take a nationally aligned advanced placement course with the potential of earning college credit. AP Pre-Calculus will replace our current math analysis course because integral parts of that curriculum are included in the new AP offering. Our current math analysis course curriculum will be repurposed and updated to reflect the topics covered in the AP Pre-Calculus course. This change will help more students be prepared to meet the needs and demands of a rigorous college experience rooted in mathematics. It will also provide free online practice and videos through AP Classroom to meet the needs of students where they are and to prepare them to take part in the nationally normed test. First Foundations of Police Science is a one-credit elective course proposed for targeted high school sites. It will serve as an introduction to law enforcement and public safety careers, and it is intended to build strong relationships between students, the Virginia Beach Police Department, and the community. The course will be taught by existing Virginia Beach instructors with regular collaboration from the Virginia Beach Police and other entities. Students enrolled in the course will have many opportunities for field experiences. After completing the course, graduating seniors may choose to be part of the Virginia Beach Police Department's cadet program for young people 18 to 20 years old. Younger students may choose to continue their coursework through the Public Safety Program at the Technical and Career Education Center or through dual enrollment with TCC. In 2020, the Virginia Department of Education announced the addition of the 17th career cluster in the field of energy. Our next proposal is driven by this addition and locally expanding markets in solar and offshore wind. Renewable Energy 1 and 2 is a 2-year half-day program proposed for the Advanced Technology Center. The new program will be framed around guidelines from the North American Board of Certified Energy Practitioners. This organization is respected, well-established, and widely recognized as the certifying organization for professionals in the field of renewable energy. NABCEP offers certifications and credentials for skilled professionals, specialists, and those new to working in the areas of photovoltaics, solar heating, small wind technology. The course will also prepare students to pursue careers in offshore wind. Throughout the program, students will engage in an in-depth, hands-on study of solar and wind technology emerging in our region. They will have the opportunity to work with local industry and Virginia Beach Schools craftsmen on current projects and share their learning with other students. This slide shows by the chart the first 5 courses have no budget impact. Yeah, they said, well, I'm sorry, yeah, this
So
was on.
I'm not sure what happened, but it is in your school board folder, so sorry about that, and you have a handout. Yeah.
All right, the budget implication. The slide shows by the chart, the first 5 courses have no budget impact. Open educational resources will be leveraged, and no new textbook adoptions will be needed. No new funding is requested as part of this implementation. The local budget impact for the implementation of the 2 new career and technical education elective courses is minimal, as an instructional positions currently in the budget will be used to staff all new career pathway offerings. The bulk of the request is for curriculum and student engagement in the community. In addition to the local impact shown here, Carl D. Perkins and other grant funding will supplement industry partner donations to set up classrooms and labs for the new classes. Thank you for considering these proposals. I would now like to invite Dr. Sarah Lockett, Director of Technical and Career Education, Thomas Coker, Coordinator of Mathematics, Chris Trott, Coordinator of Social Studies, and Keith Goodman, Coordinator of Science, and Jamie Owen, Coordinator of IB, to join me to answer any questions that you may have. Yes?
All right, Mrs. Melnick, then Mrs. Franklin.
Okay, so just when I didn't think there could be anything more wonderful, you popped another 7 up there. So this is really remarkable. So my first question, I have 2. The first is, you said MYP physics, so MYP middle school years.
Mhm.
Is that for middle schools? Because I heard you use high schools in with MYP, and so it caused a little confusion.
It is for high school, but I'll let.
Please come to the podium.
Oh, sorry.
Hello, I'm Jamie LaCava Owen, the IB coordinator. So the middle years program ranges from 6 to grade 10, but it would only be available at Princess Anne High School for grades 9 and 10.
Okay, all right. So, the other thing is, I mean, these new classes are amazing. Dr. Lockett, great work, and I love this Foundations of Police Science with a pathway to the public safety courses at the Technical and Career Education Center. Kudos to that. Oh gosh, I had another question, but honestly, thank you for keeping up with the times and for keeping up with our students, because that came up earlier today too, that we're having to keep up with these kids and we're answering, and I'm really happy to see all of this.
Okay, Mrs. Franklin.
Thank you. Amazing. Love it. I especially love the Foundations of Police Science, and I do have a question about that. So does this create any quicker pathway if they decide to go that route? Is there an affiliation that we can create that would allow them, by taking this elective, to maybe shave off some time that it might take for them?
So students who are taking this elective still have to wait till they're 20 and a half
Sure.
years old to enter the police
Yeah.
academy. I think it is more of at this point, an introduction, so
Okay.
students don't have to make that half-day, everyday commitment
Gotcha.
to public safety at the tech center. It also gives
Oh,
us a
okay.
chance to reach a whole new group of students at those pilot schools, and we'll start with one school in the fall. Now, if they move on past this course, and that's what we'll be looking at in the future to develop, what are the dual enrollment pathways with TCC? We already have students from the Health Science Academy taking EMT classes through TCC. And so what are the next pathways? So in that sense, yes, it does, because they'll have that opportunity after finishing this intro course to look at what college courses can they take to help them along in that journey. So it's an intro at this point.
Okay, I love that. Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you very much.
Mrs. Manning.
Thank you. I love these new courses. These are great, and I really like the numbers on the impact of 0. You said it's going to be open resources. Have you identified those sources already?
It would be AP, the AP College Board. gives teachers that teach AP courses and also in the honors course, because it's College Board, they will give them resources, not just resources for that, but also like assessments, quizzes, videos. They also give help to students as well. They have online practice, so.
Okay, so there won't be, for example, AP Physics C, there won't be a need for a textbook?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And when I'm looking at this, what's in my mind is our teacher shortage. We're adding classes here. How are we gonna find the teachers to teach these classes? And are these gonna be replacing any other classes, or are they gonna be completely in addition to?
They will be an addition to, but when the students sign up, so for example, the world history and geography, they might not end up taking world history. So basically, we have staff that's certified to teach these already, so it'll absorb in the numbers. So instead of taking World One, a student, like then they don't want to take the AP course as a freshman, they could go ahead and take the honors world history, but that would be the same pool of teachers already teaching at the high school would be, I guess, the best
So you feel
example.
like you already have a pool of certified teachers to teach all of these?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson?
So, for the foundations of the police science, you indicated that you would you're gonna target like a specific school to start it next year. Have you identified that school yet, or are you not willing to tell us what it is yet?
No, we can. Bayside High School, Green Run High School, Lansdowne High School.
Bayside, Green Run, and
We'll
Yep,
start with
we'll
one
start
of the three.
Bayside.
That's
Go ahead.
the, sorry.
Go ahead.
So that's the targeted pool. We're looking to start at one site, so I think that's a conversation of which of those three sites would be with Dr. Brower and the principals on where that might best fit, with the hope of increasing the workforce pipeline to the police force, but also increasing the diversity and the number of young women that are considering joining the police force locally. So that's kind of the thought that went into the sites that were targeted as possible sites.
so you said, so it would be one of the three, Bayside, Green Run, and what was the third
For
one?
Lansdowne.
Lansdowne, one of those three for next year, and then possibly expanding it as time goes on. So on the renewable energy, would this be something that could be offered at all of our schools so that it could feed into our environmental science program that we have?
It's currently slated to be taught as a half-day program at the ATC, which would pull it from all schools. It's a 3-credit course. If you look at the length of, at the list of competencies, it's lengthy. It's pretty meaty. And when we think about adding industry credentials into those, for those kids, the feeling was that the ATC was the best place. You all might have heard that TCC's Virginia Beach campus, where the ATC is located, has, with city funding, gotten a wind turbine, offshore wind turbine simulator.
Yes.
So there's access to those things at TCC.
I see.
And with the busing that's available, and with the closing of the fiber optic program that we sunsetted, it just wasn't building the sustainable careers for students that we wanted at the pay rate that students are really looking for. This is a replacement for that program, so that's also their space at the ATC, so that was another consideration.
Is
But
this something that possibly maybe ninth or 10th grader could
they
take?
could. Mhm.
And then go into our environmental science
Correct.
program after that?
It is proposed for 9th through 12th grade, so a student could take this in 9th grade.
If they had that desire, okay.
And made room in their schedule,
So
definitely could.
I'm really, really pleased with all of these courses, and I think you guys are definitely thinking about where we are in our times and also for the future. Thank you for coming up with these things. Thank you.
Madam Chair, please add Ms. Owens to the queue.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Owens.
Thank you. And hopefully you guys are able to hear me okay. Perfect. So I too am very excited about these offerings. My question is kind of, I guess, building on the same vein of what Ms. Manning was asking about our staff shortages. I understand that we have staff members who are certified to be able to teach these courses and will likely be able to have schedules arranged to where there is a space for them to teach the courses. But I'm concerned, and maybe you guys will be able to share some resources and how it'll be handled, but it sounds like that's going to be an additional prep for them, where if they were teaching 3 or 4 classes a day, and have the space to do so and are certified to do so, but are teaching something completely different, that may increase the stress on already overwhelmed situations. Do we have something in place where we're going to kind of be able to ensure that the teachers who are assigned to teach these are not going to have like 3 separate preps on a day, or how that's going to be laid out?
Well, the first few courses are from the academy, and I know the coordinator has been working with the assistant principal over the scheduling to ensure that does not happen. So, for example, there's an anatomy teacher at Princess Anne High School that wants to teach the sports, exercise, health, science course, so that way the students can get that diploma. They want to take this. The teachers are willing to teach that, and they have already been spoken with.
Okay, so the first 3 are only going to be in the academy program?
For right now, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
His IB program is at Princess Anne High School.
Mhm.
The next program is Princess Anne High School.
Okay.
Ocean Lakes Academy for AP Physics, they will probably as well want that, but the teachers already are kind of teaching that kind of in the other physics-y course, and students and the teachers are asking, can we have this course? We want the weighted credit. We want to go ahead and take the AP exam. So our teachers are willing. When you look at the AP pre-calculus, that's across the board. We have math analysis. We will be phasing out a math analysis, and so they will be taking AP pre-calculus, that curriculum. That way our students can also, once again, they don't get a weighted credit for math analysis, they will get a weighted credit for pre-calculus, and they will be able to take that AP exam. So it should not cause any, staffing issues.
Okay, thank you.
And before we go to Mrs. Melnick again, I just wanted to say, because I think it was I appreciate Ms. Owen's question, but I had an opposite reaction when I saw this, but I'm glad that we got, that if, having the teaching background for teachers, and you've kind of confirmed this, to stay engaged and motivated, courses like this, they often, and you've confirmed that they are really motivated with new coursework. It keeps them challenged and something new and fresh. But I think it is important, and I appreciated the question about the workload and the prep, the number of preps. So what I'm hearing from you is that this is worked in concert with the teacher, and some not forced on a teacher, but these are teachers willing and able to teach a new course, which is a big deal for a teacher. And so thank you for that.
Yes.
Okay. Mrs. Riggs.
The math analysis, you're exchanging that for what? Which one?
AP pre-calculus.
Why do they not need math analysis anymore? Why are you exchanging?
Well, that
changing those?
curriculum, and I'll let Mr. Pope explain a little bit more, but that curriculum will be in AP calculus using the AP College Board. But I'll let you explain better.
AP Pre-Calculus is a brand new course being offered next year by College Board. When we did a crosswalk between our current math analysis course and the AP course, they were about 92% the exact same course. So when we talk about the options of having an AP classroom, having that nationally norm, having a network of thousands of teachers across the entire country to work with, for the bonus of every college recognizing that course, math analysis is an odd name. You go outside of the state sometimes, I'll get calls, what's math analysis exactly? No one's gonna have a question for the AP Pre-Calc is. They're gonna know what it means. And then the best part about it is that AP Classroom, free assessments, free everything, the open educational resources, instead of one state trying to work together to figure it, we're gonna have that whole national wealth of knowledge to pull from.
So if a teacher is certified with math analysis, are they gonna have to get recertification?
No, so when in mathematics, you are K-12 certified once you're certified at the high school level, so every teacher that teaches math analysis can absolutely teach pre-calculus. We'll of course be offering essential sessions and professional development to ensure that that crosswalk that we do next year is comfortable and everyone understands it and there's no issues with that. But like I said, the change is almost unit numbers. It's
So they
that
don't have to
close.
take any more, okay.
Nope, they can literally teach what they taught this year with minor changes to a few lessons here and there.
Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you.
So, Dr. Lockett, you mentioned the opportunity for additional industry certifications. Just since everybody's done, just for the viewing public, can you let them know how many industry certifications our students earned last year? Because I think it's impressive.
Off the top of my head, it's 12,400 something. It's close, and I say that because we're finding bits and pieces in summer school, and you know, it's funny, we had some kids go to ODU on their own and add additional dental certifications that we're just finding out about now because they did that on their own. So that's success.
It's impressive.
Success, but it's huge, and it's more industry credentials related to our career and technical curriculums than we did pre-pandemic. So we're super excited about
Yeah,
that.
and you should be. Thank you.
So we got to give social studies a little love now. Got the math and the science covered. And I apologize if my mind wandered a bit. But honors world history. So what grade level are we Are we talking freshmen?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. Because I just remember as a parent, and it's been a while now, but that was certainly if I could pick one course that needed beefing up, that was it.
And it's based on the pre-AP framework. So again, it's the College Board materials and the practices that go along with, you know, deepening students' critical thinking and inquiry and.
And are these two separate courses, the geography, or is it a combined
It's
one? This
combined.
honors one
Yeah.
is, okay. And then
It
that,
follows-
and then they could go this way, one or the other for the next level, history or geography.
So
for actual AP,
our
right?
actual ninth grade course is World History and Geography Part 1, and our 10th grade course is
Okay.
World
So
History and
that's
Geography
evolved.
Part 2.
Mhm.
So it follows the Honors World History and Geography 1 follows the World History 1
Mhm.
path. So it's relatively the same course, and the pre-AP framework actually mapped and did a crosswalk document for our Virginia standards. They did it for every state. So we have a document that has the crosswalk of our current standards as with the pre-AP standards. So.
And what would be the criteria for a student in eighth grader to qualify for honors?
There's no
It's just
prerequisite.
total choice?
Yes.
Okay.
Those students who want to pursue AP but don't feel quite ready in ninth grade.
All right, thank you.
Of course.
So is the honors world history and geography, could that be in all schools for next year, or are you just gonna
Oh,
again
yes.
target?
Yes.
Okay, I
All
just wanted to
schools.
clarify that, so that would be in all schools. Thank you.
Mrs. Felton?
Thank you, Chair Wright. Mrs. Lockett, this question is for you. And I'd just like to say thank you for that grand tour that we had with our veterinarian program at TCC. It was awesome. And watching the students working with the, learning how to give shots to our animals. But my question to you, I know you mentioned that our students cannot become police officers until 20 and a half. Did I hear you mention also that when I'm out in the community, I've attended several community events, Hispanic communities, out in the CTAC community, over in Bayside community, the Tri-Campus community, a couple of those things we've had. And parents ask about how the students are getting that community internship, but that community work in as well. So they can't join police department until 20 and a half. So are we connecting with the Virginia Beach Cadet Program, Police Cadet Program?
Yes, and so this course is really intended to bring a bridge to build awareness for students early that cadet program is there for them. And for those who aren't familiar with the cadet program, it's part-time work after they graduate from high school, before they're old enough. And we have some connections to working as a 911 operators. There are lots of like pathway offshoots until they're old enough to go to the police academy. So the idea is really to build awareness of all of those city services with our young people and what they can do while they're in high school to continue that pathway through one of our centers or dual enrollment, and then what those next steps are after graduation, both educational and workforce.
Thank you for that, because they are getting that community involvement. And if you see them at work while they're in those events, they're really working it hard. And I find it very interesting how they're vested in it as well. And we have several, I mean, it's quite a few of them out there in those community events, and thank you for that. I appreciate that. I pass it on to the parents.
Okay.
Like that number's 12,442.
You want to say that at the mic?
It's so impressive.
Super exciting.
Yes. Should be proud.
12,842.
Okay, I believe that covers it for now. Thank you for all of you joining us tonight.
Thank you, and I appreciate your questions. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, that brings us to the consent portion of the agenda. I'll announce the items as presented here. And then we'll trace back to read the resolution. So we have the American Education Week resolution as A. B is recommendation of general contractor for 1 Pembroke and Trentwood Elementary Schools MUAU replacement. 2 is Thalia Elementary School HVAC replacement. And then we have under C, 5 Policy Review Committee recommendations, Policy 3-51, School Activity Funds and Internal Accounts. 2 is Policy 5-9, Age of Entrance / Kindergarten. 3, Policy 514, School Attendance Zones. 4 is Policy 613, School Day. And finally, number 5 is Policy 7-57, Vehicles, Motorized Devices, and Animals on School Grounds. So let's go back to A, and we're all set to read the resolution.
Right.
Mrs. Holtz?
Yes. Whereas November 14th to the 18th, 2022 is recognized as the 101st Annual American Education Week by the National Education Association to celebrate public education and honor individuals who are making a difference in ensuring every child receives a quality education. And whereas the creation of this week has encouraged resolutions across the country to help encourage national support of public education. And whereas American Education Week is a celebration of distinguished individuals critical to the success of public education for the nation's 50 million K-12 students. And whereas the National Association calls for a week to be observed by in all communities for the purpose of informing the public of the accomplishments and needs of the public schools, to secure the cooperation and support of the public in meeting those needs. And whereas the school board of the City of Virginia Beach is focused on encouraging and recognizing the support for public education. And whereas Virginia Beach City Public Schools is committed to relationships with the community and stakeholders through Compass to 2025 to increase support and involvement in education. Now therefore be it resolved that the school board of the City of Virginia Beach designates the week of November 14th through the 18th, 2022 as American Education Week in the Virginia Beach City Public Schools. And be it further resolved, the copy of this resolution be spread across the official minutes of this board, adopted by the school board of the City of Virginia Beach this day on November 2022.
Thank you, Mrs. Holtz. So a motion to approve the consent agenda, Mrs. Franklin, and a second, Mrs. Melnick. Okay, all in favor, show of raised hand, please.
Ms. Owens, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have a unanimous vote.
Thank you. Action portion of the meeting, agenda item 15, beginning with personnel report and administrative appointments. Motion to approve. Mrs. Riggs, a second. Mrs. Franklin. Any discussion? Right, hearing none, please show your approval with a raised hand.
Ms. Owens, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have unanimous vote.
Thank you. And there are no administrative appointments this evening. So that brings us to action item B, which is our budget fiscal year 21-22 resolution regarding reversion and revenue sharing formula reconciliation. So to open this up for discussion, a motion to bear with us a moment. We have to put a motion on the floor to have a discussion, and we have different versions. This is an unusual situation, so.
And I can summarize really quickly for everyone, and then, and that's fine. I'll do my best. So in your packet this evening, you should have seen, I think there's 5 budget resolutions, they're drafts, for 5 different options for the potential use of reversion revenue sharing formula funding. Option 1 is going to be off the original resolution you saw a couple of weeks ago. It's just going to be adding that $1.6 million that where they trued up the revenue sharing formula reconciliation, and that was split between the 3 CIP projects proportionately. We increased it from that original resolution, and then we subsequently reduced that to cover potential one-time incentive for teachers at $1,000. And you'll see, I think, she's got the resolutions up there. I can't see that. But that is about $5.7 million on option 1. So, again, we just increased to the $1.6 million. We spread it between the 3 projects, which is Princess Anne High, Betty F. Williams Bayside 6 and Bayside High School, and then we turned around and reduced those projects proportionately to cover the cost of providing a $1,000 incentive to teachers only. Option 2, again, that $1.6 million was added to the original resolution you saw a couple of weeks ago, proportionally to those 3 projects. And then we also then reduced that subsequently to cover the one-time incentive for all employees, all staff, at $1,000. And so that came to about $11.6 million. So that's option 2. Option 3, again, original resolution, but the $1.6 million were for one-time incentive for teachers only. That averages out to be about $290 per teacher. And again, when I refer to teachers, it's about 5,245 teachers that we are estimating that on. Option 4, again, same original resolution, additional $1.6 million towards those 3 CIP projects, and then recommending user our ESSER 3 funding to cover one-time incentives for either teachers and or staff, and that would be out of ESSER funds. And again, the amounts for those, the teacher would be a $5.7 million cost out of ESSER, all staff would be $11.6 million. So that's option 4.
Okay, hold on
Yeah.
a second.
I was going to ask the same thing. So the ESSER isn't mentioned here. The understanding would be
it's not in the
it's,
resolution. It would be your original resolution would stay the same, and we just added that $1.6 million to it because the original resolution you saw 2 weeks ago, we did not have that amount in there because it was an after the fact true up. So that's the original resolution plus the $1.6 million in those 3 projects. That comes up to the total for the reversion and the revenue sharing formula reconciliation. But then the direction you can go to is to use ESSER funding, which is our ESSER 3 funding. We can use that legitimately to either give a $1,000 incentive to teachers at $5.7 million, or $1,000 incentive to all staff at 11.6 million.
You won't
Hold
see
on,
that,
hold on.
you won't see that in the resolution because the resolution is specific to reversion funding.
Correct.
So option 4 would cover either of those options, either of those opportunities with using ESSER funds for any kind of teacher incentives. But you won't see mention of the ESSER funds in this resolution because this is specific to the reversion money.
When would we see that, though? Where would we both be voting on ESSER funds?
So the board, you don't technically need to vote on those funds. That's a plan that's submitted to the State Department of Education, can be amended. It's simply getting the direction from the board to do that. You could take a vote on that if you wanted to, but what you'd really want to do is vote on the resolution and give us that direction.
Okay. And then number 5?
And then option 5, the original resolution is reduced by about $10 million, and that would be something that would have conversation about returning that $10 million, or actually letting the city retain that $10 million, because they already have that money, and it would be something that we have conversation about returning that money to the taxpayers. So we would only be asking for a reappropriation for $10 million less than the original, or the resolution with that 1.6 million. Does that make sense?
But again, we can't say that that's what we want to happen with that money. That's city council's decision.
Well, originally, we decided it wasn't appropriate to put in the resolution a directive to city council of what they would do to the money. I think some subsequent conversations, we would be checking with legal and with city staff, that we probably could put some soft language in the resolution that says that we are asking only for the 38 million and not the 48 million, and that $10 million would be available, and that would be something we would look at. According to the city staff conversations, there is some concern about a legal perspective on that, and there's also a possibility, depending on how that was dispersed or taken care of, there could be costs that would come to the school division to offset what the city would need to do in addition.
No.
We don't know that. That would be, it's very preliminary in discussion.
Okay, I was
So-
going to ask her to clarify one thing, but you go
Okay,
ahead
yeah,
first.
I'm just a point of order on, are we having discussion now on all of these, or?
We went through them all
Okay.
so that when we can put one on the floor.
I mean, I do have some discussion, so
Mhm.
if you want to add me to the queue.
So that's the last, those are those options that we have that represent the resolutions that you have in front of you, the draft. And so I just wanted to try my best to summarize that for you and then leave it open for discussion and questions.
And could you further add so that we can then put a motion on the floor why the administration came up with this recommendation for the ESSER funding? And this traces back to the earlier workshop, correct?
Yes, it does. And again, we wanted to be, to try to maintain the direction that city council has given us and try to put that money towards CIP. Also, in addition, we're trying to work through a PPA process, and anything that we can put towards those CIP would actually defer any future reliance on debt. So that remains whole if we do it like that. ESSER funds are available. We have confirmed with the state that it is a legitimate use of those funds, and it is certainly just a recommendation for that.
Yeah, so when we sent communication
on.
about this, our recommendation was that we would proceed with the reversion resolution in its original form, and that the board provide us direction on how you would like us to proceed relative to the ESSER funds, with regards to whether or not you wanted to give an incentive to teachers or to all staff or nothing. So that is administration's recommendation.
Which is option number
That would be option 4.
All right, so to open this up for discussion, let's put an option on the floor. Proposal, Mrs. Riggs?
I just need a clarification. When you said about option number 5, that there was concern, the city said that there would be, might be a cost to the school system to do that?
Potentially. It could potentially, depending on how they execute something like that. I mean, there's very little, there's not been any in-depth discussion about that. We reached out to city staff because we have never asked that question of how to refund that money. Certainly, the city already has it in their possession because we booked that at year end. And so it would just be, if they were to do any type of refund, real estate wise, personal property tax, there may be a cost that the city incurs. It is potentially something they could pass a portion of that to the school system. We don't know, and that would be part of our discussion. And also, through conversation with city staff, that they felt like they would definitely need to consult with their legal counsel, and certainly we would consult with ours to make sure that all bases are covered if we were to go in that direction.
Okay, so yes. So, Mrs. Anderson? I just needed, I need a motion for a
That's what I'm
draft.
getting ready to do.
Okay.
I'm gonna make a motion. I'm gonna make a motion that we put these options on the floor for discussion. That way we can discuss all of them and then make a decision. So that's my motion right now. Does anybody want to second that so that we can discuss these options?
Mrs. Linetti, does that sound like,
Ms.
is that a?
Williams?
That's an
Seconded.
acceptable option if you have a second, yes.
Okay, yep, Mrs. Williams, all right then. All in favor of
Thank you.
putting these all on the floor for discussion, show a raised hand, please.
And I vote yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have unanimous vote.
Okay. So, Mrs. Manning?
Thank you. You know, one thing that I do support in option 4 and 5 is that we can retain much of this money, but still give a bonus to staff with the ESSER funds or teachers. And a proposal that I have would be to add additional language to it that would say, for example, option 5, where the 10 million's not in there, where we add additional language that the board supports returning the money to the taxpayers at the discretion of the city council at no cost to the school board. I know that, you know, when we ask city council, if we're asking for, in our agreement, if we are asking for additional funding from them, we have to do it in the form of a tax increase, and we have to give a reason for that. And it seems like if we're asking for a tax rebate to go back to the taxpayers, it's kind of the same process.
I would think, but again, that's something on
Right.
the city side, and I know just the example city staff gave us was real estate, but sometimes it
Right.
goes in different directions because everybody's real estate, the way it's paid out and the way they pay it is different. So some pay it through their mortgage and it goes to the escrow, and there was just some complications that they would want to work out.
Well, and I
But
know they've done this before, so it doesn't seem like it should be that complicated. I know they don't do it very often, unfortunately, but it's, you know, our community is hurting, and I just really feel strongly. We've got families hurting that are, you know, families could use some of this additional money, maybe off their tax bill to help their kids with tutoring on their own. They could use it to maybe fill up their gas tank. I mean, a little bit goes a long way for our community right now. And, you know, I think since our community we've asked them to give us money in the past when we've been short, I really feel strongly that we should give money back when we have plenty here. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, discussion on that or any of the other drafts. Mrs. Franklin? Oh, I'm sorry. Mrs. Anderson, okay, and then Mrs. Franklin.
So I'm not in favor of option 5 of asking the city council to do something. It's not our job to tell city council what to do. That's their job. It is our job to take care of the school system and to ask for funds when it's necessary. But this money that is there, it's not like it's money that we just didn't use. It's some of it, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is reversion money that came in and was unanticipated. Am I correct on that, Dr. Spence?
Yes, ma'am. As you saw during the presentation on this reversion during the information session at our last meeting, this money came in a couple of different ways. A little less than 2% of this was money unspent, as we've talked about for years. We don't spend to zero. We try to keep that at about 2%. And that's to account for increases in unexpected costs like fuel costs, or we had a risk management cost recently, so things like that. There were additional monies that came in through state sales tax, and then there was additional dollars that came in through the city's true-up, which was overperformance of their revenue, and then that was our percentage of the revenue sharing formula,
Right.
which was a sizable amount of this, and I think it's outlined in the
It is.
in the resolution itself. But anyway, so correct, that's where the money comes from.
So I'm in favor more of option 4 in using the ESSER funding to give our teachers an extra bonus above and beyond the $1,000 that they're already going to be getting in December. I am in favor of using ESSER funding for giving them an additional $1,000 in January so that it's the next tax year, because every little bit of money helps. And so if we gave them all of it in December 15th check, then that would go on this year's taxes. If it went on next year's, if part of that went on next year's taxes, then that would be a little bit less that the government would take. And so it would be money in their pocket. So the whole idea of this giving an extra bonus to them is to show our appreciation and to show them that, you know, that we are trying to retain our teachers. And oh, by the way, using ESSER funds is something that our governor suggested that we do to incentivize teachers to stay. Our governor actually issued that just recently, that he criticized us for not using the ESSER funds fast enough. And so one of the suggestions that he made recently was that we use some of that ESSER funding for teacher retention. So I think we would be doing what the governor suggested. We would be helping our teachers out. And my suggestion is to use ESSER funding for the other $1,000, and to give it. My suggestion is to give it to that extra $1,000 in January. Give them $1,000 December 15th and $1,000 January 15th. And it would still serve the same purpose. It would come at a time that they need it. It would show our appreciation, and I think that's. I'm sorry, what was that? Employees. I'm sorry. I don't mean just teachers. I mean employees. Thank you. That's what I meant.
Okay. Now, Mrs. Franklin.
So with the 11 million that we were talking about before, that was actually the city council's recommendation. Is that correct?
Not city council.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Are you talking about the 11 million for all the staff, the incentive?
No.
Okay. Okay.
I'm talking about using portion of that to be applied towards the CIP.
Their direction over the last few years is that we should work to put more cash, if
Correct.
it's available, to our CIP program.
Yes.
City has that option, and they, of course, more, but they've been doing that all along, putting more cash toward their CIP program to try to reduce what's on
Correct.
for debt.
What's in the debt load, which is one of their primary concerns about approving this project.
Correct.
So I think, in my mind, I'm thinking that by doing taking that recommendation that City Council has given us and showing good faith and goodwill towards using those funds toward our CIP, not asking them for additional monies, I think that seems like a really fiscally responsible thing to do with those funds, in the sense that, we're taking their direction. That I think it's a sign of goodwill between the two parties, two groups. And one of the things that I heard yesterday was, specifically in my district is, when is Kempsville High School going to be looked at? And, it's really old, and here are all the issues with Kempsville High School. And so, thank you, Mr. Freeman. I appreciate the smile. But and so one of the things I think that we have to be cognizant about is just looking at the ability to continue to show good faith and goodwill for future projects, because I know they're coming up soon, and I'm excited about that. And I just feel like the financially responsible thing to do would be to apply that and take their recommendation to bring some unity and goodwill between the two groups. And yes, and then adding on to that with the ESSER funds to be used for, and I do want to clarify too, and thank you for your response, OTs would be included in that
If we do
additional-
all staff.
Yes, yep, bonus. Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Hughes?
Thank you. It actually is money we didn't use. Now, I do realize there are accounting principles. Sometimes we get a windfall in the form of a grant, but it is in fact money we didn't use. That's exactly what reversion funds are. As far as it's not our job to go to city council to tell them what to do, we're not going to city council to tell them what to do. We frequently go to city council to ask for things, and asking them for something is perfectly fine. That's not telling them what to do. And I think that we should make suggestions as to what to do with this. And while we do have a responsibility to take care of our schools, our staff and our families, they are the schools. Staff and family are the schools. The buildings are not schools. The people are schools. And our people suffered for a few years due to the reaction to COVID. They lost their jobs. They ran up extra bills they couldn't pay. Our staff, when you give them a raise, we also raise their taxes. It's taking it away. Families are hurting. There are children that need tutoring. There are more people, asking for free lunches, needing help from various programs. This money could help that. People are our schools, and this is a good way to help the people that keep these buildings running. And I think this merits a look, giving some tax money back to the community that we serve.
Okay, Mrs. Melnick?
So this wouldn't be raising taxes, correct?
Well, we don't have any.
Right, taxing
Yeah,
authority.
we have no taxing authority, so that would be.
So I just want to, just since we're all discussing, I'd like to say that I agree with Mrs. Franklin, and this resolution comes on the heels of the CIP presentation today. Our prioritized projects for our 6-year CIP planning and replacement projects. We have 11 million square feet of space that we have to maintain, and it's not free. And so, the city council has suggested that we use this towards our CIP project. It is a goodwill, opportunity, and we have the ESSER funds for $1,000 for all employees. And so that's where I land, number four.
I just wanted to see if there's anybody here. Okay, Mrs. Manning?
Okay, so when I look at number 5, it seems like it's accomplishing everything that we've all just been talking about. It puts 25 million back into the CIP. It puts money in our risk management fund that we need. We can still use ESSER funds to fund the $1,000 bonus. And it gives money back to the taxpayers. It seems like a win-win on option 5. So, I'm just not.
Okay.
So.
Now for me, the reason I'm comfortable supporting option 4, because I recognize the appeals to the taxpayers, that the taxpayers were given relief by city council in the spring, basically on the backs of the school division with the revenue funds that were instead put into a lockbox. So the taxpayers are not paying extra tax right now for flooding, in spite of the fact that the city widely approved it. And so I'm the first to appreciate that side of it. So given that they have the 22 million from the spring, which the revenue sharing formula, the spirit of the formula would have sent our way. So given that, I am perfectly fine with supporting option 4, which is all the money, the revenue sharing money in the CIP and the 1,000 for all employees with ESSER funding. Mrs. Franklin. Oh, Mrs. Weems, who we haven't heard from yet.
Okay. Okay, Ms. Page, just for clarification, if we went with option 5, we could still use ESSER funds for the
Yes,
bonus?
that is
Okay.
correct.
So basically, number 5 is doing everything
with the addition of giving back some to our community, it's less going into the CIP, but it's still a really big chunk going into the CIP. It's 25.3 million in our CIP. It also does the $1,000 bonus, but it also gives money back to the community. So my first preference is option 5, but I like 5 and I like 4. Those are my two favorite. But 5 is my favorite because it does everything.
We'll try to get a motion vote soon, but Mrs. Franklin?
Well, and I agree with the thought that, Ms. Hughes, I actually agree. You know, people are the schools. I get that. But as, you know, I just feel that as a board, though, we do have a responsibility to be able to look at future budgets and look about funding. $10 million on a $425 million project is a good chunk of money that we will not have to then go back in the future to the city. And I get that. I totally understand that. But I think that when you're talking about, yes, it's a good chunk, but it's not. There is a difference between 25 million and 35 million. And I think a lot of times when we're looking at these big numbers, it's easy to be like, oh, well, it's just, 10 million less. But in reality, it's 10 million less we will have for future projects that we'll have to go back to the city and figure out in the future. We're very lucky right now to have the ability to have these discussions. I think that is amazing that we can have these discussions right now. We do not know what's going to happen in future budgets. And to me, I'm sorry, I do budgeting every single day. And to me, it just feels like, feeling like, okay, well, yes, it's going to be great for right now, but that's like somebody telling someone to spend all their money right now and not prepare and save some money and put it in an emergency fund. So I just feel like that we are investing right now in our future, which we know is going to come because we have a whole list of schools that come after these 3 schools and these 3 projects. And I do feel like in order to maintain that goodwill and the ability to show the appearance that we are being responsible with our funding and looking in the future. That's why I feel like I support option 4.
Okay, we'll have Mrs. Riggs, and then it'll be Mrs. Melnick and Mrs. Manning.
My thought is with option 5, what's to guarantee us that the city council would give that back to the citizens? They might have thought, hey, we've given them that 22 million in the reserve fund this past spring. And so there's not a guarantee that they would do that.
No, there's not. We could recommend that that's what we would like, but there's no guarantee.
Exactly. So, in that case, I totally agree with what Miss Franklin has said. I agree with that entire amount for option 4 going back like the city has recommended. I know that they have been talking to us for the last several years, recommending. I know I've talked to Rosemary Wilson. She's called me specifically on that and asked, would we please look at that and put more in our CIP? They've talked about it amongst themselves. They're wanting to see us do that. And we do have several schools down the road that really, we're going to need it. And we're going to have to go back and ask for it. We are in a very good position and haven't been in this good a position with our CIP funds in a long time. So I think we need to take advantage of it. So.
Go ahead, Mrs. Melnick.
And just in addition, there may be legal ramifications to that, or it may cost us money.
It's just a possibility.
It's a
we
possibility.
Don't want to stand up here
So
and
we
not
might
mention that.
Offer to give 10 million back, and then we may have to pay something that we will have to find out of our budget then. I'm going to stick with option 4.
All right, Mrs. Manning.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt option number 5 with additional language that states the school board supports returning the money to the taxpayers at the discretion of city council at no cost to the school board in the amount of $10 million.
Second. Mrs. Hughes. All right, Mrs. Anderson, did you want to speak to that before?
Can't speak to this one because I wanted to speak in favor of option 4, but I'll
Well,
wait.
okay. All right, does everybody understand the motion for option 5? Okay, all in favor, show,
Can I get a quick question, Ms. Linetti? If they vote yes on this, obviously we know what happens. If they vote no on this, does that end discussion on any other option? On any
No,
other
you're
options
back
on
to
this section?
the motion that Mrs.
All the motions are on the floor.
Anderson-
Okay, I just wanted to be clear, so I knew what was about to happen. Thank you.
all right, so all in favor of option 5, show a raised hand, please.
Okay, we have 3 ayes.
All opposed, a raised hand.
Ms. Owens, how do you vote?
I vote no.
Thank you. So we have 3 ayes and 8 nays, so that motion did not pass.
So the chair will entertain us another motion.
Well, you're back
Okay,
on the main
Mrs.
motion.
Mrs. Anderson.
So, I proposed a while ago that I was in favor of option 4, and my reasons why. But there's a couple other reasons too. Like Ms. Melnick said, we can't guarantee that city council will do what we ask them to do in the first place. They may thumb their nose at us. And number 2, who gets the money, even if we're not gonna do option 5, obviously now, so I wasn't even sure that, that citizens would have had a chance to really reap any benefits, because we don't know what citizens would have reaped any benefits to begin with. But since that option is taken off the table now, we voted not to do that. I just want to make it clear that I feel like option 4 is the most common sense thing to do to me, using ESSER funds. But I'd like it written in there, if we could, and include that we use ESSER funds to give all employees another $1,000 bonus in January for their January 15th paycheck.
Mrs. Anderson, are you making a motion to adopt resolution 4 with the addition that you use ESSER funding?
Can I ask you to, before you say yes to that question, can I ask you not to add that addendum around the ESSER funds? That's just not information we want to send over to city council in a reversion resolution.
So we don't have to put that as part of the resolution. We
Right,
can
this
have something
resolution is
separate.
specifically going to city council, and
Okay.
that's a separate matter specific to the schools and does not need to be in this resolution.
So I'll make an amendment to my original motion, which was to discuss everything. And my motion now is that we adopt option 4 at this time.
Is there a second? Mrs. Riggs, any further discussion? All right, all in favor, show a raised hand, please.
And I vote yes.
We have 9 ayes
All opposed, a raised hand.
and 2 nays, so the motion did pass to adopt option 4.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues, for the discussion. So next steps, just if we can clarify, either Ms. Pate or Dr. Spence?
Sure, so by taking action tonight, because of the dollar amount, it does have to go to public hearing from, the cities has to do that. So that public hearing will be on December 6th, and then city council will do their vote on December 13th.
So, can I have a point of order? Do we need a motion for the ESSER funds at all?
You really don't, and I don't know the best way to handle that from a Robert's Rules perspective, because it's not really a motion or a vote. We would just need some direction from the board on where you want us to go. I think everybody's kind of settled in on the $1,000 amount, and I think the biggest issue is that all staff, or is that for teachers only? And there was some discussion about that last time. So Cammy, I don't know how you want to weigh in here on a Robert's Rules question about how to have that discussion.
It's not technically part of it. I mean, you've had that discussion tonight, so you could make the motion on it. The question as to whether that was actually on the agenda or not, the ESSER funding.
Yeah.
You may want to put
Well,
that
it
for another
wasn't.
meeting and specifically direct that. My concern is it wasn't It's just, it's not in these resolutions. You had it during your discussion, so I would be worried about whether the public had noticed that that's what you're doing. I don't know that there's a panic that you couldn't put it off for another meeting. I think it'd be more
Correct.
appropriate to put it in another meeting and just direct it at that, have that discussion, make that
We
motion.
could certainly have that during a workshop discussion at our next meeting.
Yeah, I would have
And then,
concerns because I don't
Wouldn't
think it was
require any
technically
action.
noticed to the public that that's what you intended to do tonight.
If the board's comfortable with that, we'll add that to the, we'll
Yeah.
ask to add that
I
to the
just,
agenda.
I just wanted it known, though, that it was brought to my attention this afternoon that this is something that the governor suggested that we do anyway with some of our ESSER funds for teacher retention. So, hey, we're just doing what he's asking us to do.
So to confirm again, there'll be a workshop discussion next meeting on November 22nd, I believe is the date of our next meeting? Okay, on that point, okay.
Say again?
This will be available online for the public.
Yeah, this is already available online.
agenda
It
packet.
just- It's in the agenda packet and it can be seen. Yeah, well, the vote will be recorded as option 4.
All right, so the final action agenda item of the evening is calendar adjustment. So to open this up for discussion, a motion to approve the calendar adjustments as proposed. Mrs. Holtz, a second. Mrs. Melnick. Okay, welcome, Mr. Delaney. If you could give us a quick recap.
Sure. Good evening, Chair Rye, Vice Chair Melnick, Dr. Spence, and members of the board. If you recall at the last board meeting, it was requested that we look at having adjusted dismissal for high school students on January 27th of this school year. We requested time to meet with the Department of Transportation to look at this possibility. And as a result of that conversation, our recommendation is to have an adjusted dismissal for all students on January 27th. It is indeed more challenging from a transportation perspective to only have an adjusted dismissal for high school students mid-year. Early dismissal for only high school students creates several transportation conflicts with midday elementary school special needs programs. Currently, 51 of our special needs bus services midday runs on the elementary level that dismiss at varying times between 11:10 a.m. and 11:45 a.m., depending on the elementary school. Of the 51 special needs buses, none would be on time for their assigned high school run. Historically, when only high schools have dismissed early, the special needs high school buses have arrived 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes late for their take-home run. Obviously, that has an increased kind of challenge for the school to maintain. It kind of reduces the need for an adjusted dismissal day for those teachers. During the last week of the school year, I know, Ms. Hughes, you would ask what's the difference between the end of the year and the mid-year. So during the last week of the school year, the impact is not as dramatic because ridership of the high school dismissal is down about 50% or more. They're not taking exams, the centers are closed, kids aren't going to the ATC, CTE, or the environmental studies program. So when special needs buses still run a little bit late to their high school bus runs, but it impacts fewer students, and we have a better ability to compensate for the conflict. And furthermore, we believe that teachers on all levels will utilize that time to plan for the start of the second semester and complete other administrative matters. Just also for clarification, because I know, Ms. Manning, you ask about this oftentimes, at the afternoon ATC, CTE, environmental studies sessions would be canceled on that day. So again, our recommendation is that if we're going to have an adjusted dismissal on the 27th, that is for all students and staff.
Okay, we were doing a little sidebar here on the next item because I misspoke when I said this is the final action item, so forgive us. Okay, so back to calendar adjustment. Yes, so discussion. Mrs. Manning.
Yeah, I feel very strongly that our kids at our specialty programs really need that day, and they're not going to get that day. I mean, my son was in one of those programs when we lost and I saw the impact on him and the other students when there were half days. I supported changing all those half days at the end of the year. I've supported giving our teachers extra time. Now I think we need to make a decision for the students, and I think our students need these extra times, these extra hours, in light of all of the learning that they've lost over the last couple of years. Thank you.
Mrs. Riggs?
I agree. We do need to give the students this extra time. However, if you're not giving the teachers the extra time to prepare for these students and to have the ability to get all of their plans and to have all of this done for them, it's not going to help them. It would be more helpful, I think, for our students to get more out of what time the teachers have to plan, and that means all of them. That means high school, middle school, and elementary. This half day, I think, would be more advantageous for our students, for the teachers to be able to have this time to be prepared, because they need to be prepared for them, and it's very difficult with all of these new programs, the new schedules that they've got, and all that they have to do. So I just feel like we need to do it for everyone, the half day.
Well, so is that a solution? Is that where we had started with this?
Yeah, let's clear that up. The recommendation, and remember, this is only one adjustment. You made several last meeting. The recommendation, and we were asked to bring this one back, the recommendation was made during the last meeting that we adjust dismissal at the end of the first semester. The question was raised at that time about whether or not that could be for just high school teachers and not all teachers. And the answer, and at that time I said I believe there was a transportation issue and we needed time to go look at that, so we brought it back. They've looked at it. The answer is it would be difficult to make the adjustment only for high school teachers. It's due to special education bus runs, is what Mr. Delaney was saying. And so our recommendation is that we make that adjustment for a half-day dismissal. This was based on a conversation about the need for additional planning time at the end of the semester, and that we make that adjustment for all staff.
Meaning both that K to 12 would have half a day, just to clarify.
Correct. And the teachers would are not leaving when the students
Right.
leave.
So I do want to state for the record that I appreciated Mrs. Hughes' question last time. It seemed perfectly reasonable, and this is one of the times that I'm challenged as a school board member, because you're telling us it can't be done, so it can't be, but there are so many upsides to a larger division in terms of choices we can offer in this and that, but it also paralyzes us sometimes when it comes to making what would be just common sense decisions. But you're here telling us transportation can't do it, so
I don't know how many times, Ms. Rye, I felt like it's a good idea without consulting transportation, and they come back and give me that same response that you didn't think this through, and that's why we appreciated the time to do that, because they know this inside and out.
And I just still honestly feel, given the feedback and some of with 4x4 being new, and there's still some concerns and trepidation about it, that this is one gesture we can make that by helping the teachers, that by deduction helps the students. So yes, I'm good with the half day for everybody, that's part of this.
That's
The
our
motion. This is we approved everything else last meeting, just to remind everybody, so it's that specific point that's up for approval tonight.
Correct.
Okay. So is there any other comment or question about the half-day? And again, what generated this in the first place, or Mrs. Franklin?
I'm not sure if this is the right time to ask this question, but I do want to know because, again, standing out there yesterday, I did hear from a lot of teachers, especially at different high schools, that it has been problematic and very stressful. You've got three different planning times for planning for teachers. You've got some that are on the 4x4, some that are on AB, and then some that are actually on both. And so it's really difficult for them right now to try to get all of that accomplished. And I guess, I can't remember, and I apologize if this has been a full discussion that I've completely forgotten, but is the flexible scheduling, was that done to help with learning loss over the pandemic, or is that something that we will continue doing?
Yeah, so if you recall in those presentations around flexible scheduling, it was not pandemic related.
Okay.
To maximize student opportunities and to more effectively use staff.
Okay.
In every one of those presentations, I concluded them with, we are not finished with working through this schedule.
Okay.
So I'll answer two parts that you spoke about there. We are anticipating, much like Canvas, that when the second semester starts, teachers on the 4x4 are going to feel some level of relief
Sure.
because they're getting a new level of students and they're going back to what they started in August. We met with master schedulers on the high school level last week. Let's talk through some other changes we need to look at and adjust based on feedback we're receiving from teachers and from master schedulers who are assistant principals in the building. And we're going to continually look at what those adjustments need to be made. So that, to answer your question, was to maximize. You saw the course offerings today, for example. So one of the big things about that Physics C course is that it can be run on a 4x4. You can pair that up with another physics course and then take that AP exam in the spring. So we're still evaluating what does that look like and how do we keep the opportunity to remain flexible to allow those CTE offerings to be taken, those elective offerings to be taken, the questions that were offered about staff to teach courses. So that's an ongoing process that we have not, for lack of a better way of saying it, spiked the football and feel like we're done. It's still an ongoing conversation. We understand the stress and strain that is created for some teachers, for sure.
Well, and that's, you know, that's feedback that it was good to hear that because, you know, we sit here and it, you know, a lot of this stuff sounds amazing, just sitting here in theory, but in practice when they're, you know, we're actually rolling this down to the teacher level, you know, I just feel like there are a lot of teachers that are really feeling the pressure, and I do agree that it, right now, we've done this, we've made this change to create more opportunity for students. But we also need to give a little bit of relief right now, just based on the feedback that I got yesterday. So, and half day would probably be something that would be helpful. Thank you.
And Mrs. Hughes again?
Not again, this is my first comment.
Sorry. Well, you started all this.
Well, and I do
Last
appreciate the information. It does make sense why it's different in the middle of the year than it does at the end of the year. I appreciate that. And, you know, I hear what everybody's saying in the comments that, you know, with the new schedules, that teachers are feeling overwhelmed. But what I'm thinking is, I find it difficult to believe that a single half day is going to be the answer to that. On the other hand, we did a single half day a couple of years ago, and then it was a second half day, and then it was half day Wednesdays for a couple of months, and children lost out. So I just don't think one half day is the answer to solving everybody's stress level, but I also don't want to see it, you know, lead to another, you know, children missing almost a whole semester of afternoon classes again. And it seems like that, you know, that's a lot of time for relief, but it's a lot of time students miss. I just don't believe a single half day is the answer to stress. I think these kids need to be in school. They've missed enough school over the last couple of years. Half days and Monday planning days and shut down for a year. These kids need to be in school.
Okay, we have Ms. Owens on Zoom, and hopefully wrap this up.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to say that I'm in agreement with approving this additional half day to ensure that teachers have the time to get their grades and planning pulled together. At the same time, I'm hoping that if we haven't already done so, that we could, as a board or as administration or both, take another look at the following school year calendar, since I know we are approving them 2 years at a time, and see if there are any of these issues that we are fixing this time that are not adjusted for or not corrected for on the next calendar cycle, so that we're not making these changes on, you know, short notice for families, that the calendar that they're going to start the year off with, they'll know that that is what they need to plan for. I know that we had a lot of changes and some unexpected or unintended consequences. So if we could double check the following calendar and be able to make those adjustments prior to, I don't know, the next school year or maybe even the next fiscal year, I think that would be helpful. But in terms of this specific adjustment, I would be in support.
Ms. Owens, if you look at next year's calendar, these 2 days were approved as a staff day and a flex day. It was initially recommended in this calendar on a pre-Labor Day start. And when the decision was made not to have a pre-Labor Day start, we weren't able to embed this half-day in. But the solution you were asking for has been solved, and next year's calendar was already voted on and approved by the board.
Excellent. I know that another concern that came up was how some of the half days that we have built in lined up with the tryout time for winter sports. And so just making sure that we've taken a look at all the possibilities and that we're addressing them earlier rather than later. But I appreciate that that's already something as far as these days for planning that is already built in.
All right, thank you. All right, are we ready to vote, or Mrs. Weems, your hand up?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment because we do get feedback about half days, and half days are extremely, extremely difficult for families who don't have the resources, even way far in advance, to get childcare. And many times we're going to be taking off work and taking a whole day off to accommodate our half day. Most of the time, parents just aren't in love with half days. I'll just put it at that. I'm not a super big fan of them.
Yeah, and if I could just make one comment, and it's more of a forward-thinking comment than anything, because I hear that. The biggest, if you ask our teachers, and I know you all hear from them, the biggest concern our teachers have across the board, hands down, is not compensation, it's time. It's time to do their work. It's time to accomplish all of the things that teachers are asked to do. And it's the one thing that's really difficult to manufacture, given the constraints of our calendar. So, I think the board, and I'll echo Ms. Owens' point, and it may be a thing we need to look again at our calendar, even though that we've got an approved one for 2 year, for the next school year. The board really is going to need to wrestle with this conversation around time and how to accomplish it, given both the constraints of the calendar, but also things like parents aren't in favor of half days. We don't want to lose instructional time. Certainly, we wouldn't want to lose instructional time on an ongoing basis for our half-day programs, as Ms. Hughes, Ms. Manning have pointed out. So there's some real wrestling that's going to have to happen here. But I will tell you, I think from a recruitment and retention perspective, first of all, the ESSER funds are not forever. The ESSER funds disappear at the end of 2024, at the end of the 23-24 school year. And our intention is to have them spent in advance of that moment. And so those kind of, if our strategy is bonuses, in the long run, that isn't going to work. So we're going to have to wrestle together as a school division and as a community about how do we provide teacher time to accomplish the tasks that are required of them. A lot of that, and you'll hear them ask about, how do I just plan with my colleagues, like you were talking about. And so I'm signaling that we recognize this is a significant issue. This is a stopgap measure, but I do think it's one that our teachers are asking for, and we would appreciate your support of that recommendation. But long term, I think this is a bigger topic that the community and the school board are going to have to take up and figure out, okay, where are the solutions here?
Mrs. Riggs, and then that's it for the queue.
I wanted to say all of that you just said, Dr. Spence, but I asked for this at the last meeting because I met with teachers, high school teachers and elementary, and I've been hearing it. Because I've been hearing it, I met with a group of teachers, and that's the one thing they said, and I'm like, they obviously would like to have had a whole day, but because, and you explained this at the last meeting, we don't have enough to give them a whole day because of the requirements of how many hours and days that we have to give them. So you guys came back between our workshop and the regular meeting and said, we can do the half day. And I get that, how much is that half day going to help? Believe me, they even said, even a half day, they even said that to me when I met with them. And I've been reading all kinds of things across the nation. We've been seeing how school systems are going to 4-day. Not because of money. It's not because of the money it's saving. It's because they can't get teachers, they can't get enough teachers because teachers don't have the time to plan. So they're given that one day. The teachers are going 5 days. The kids aren't, because the teachers are needing the planning. And that's one of the major incentives that ways that they're getting teachers and retaining them, hiring them and retaining them, because they're going to 4-day weeks where the teachers have that 1 day planning time. And the kids are still getting their education, but they're also being able to fill those vacancies of teachers. So, and it's happening across the nation. Just read, all you gotta do is read and find out, you'll see it. So I was wondering, I'm like, God, how do they do that? But then as I've read more and more, I'm finding out it's not just because it's not saving the money. It's to hire and retain teachers. It's an incentive. Because it's just become such an enormous job for the planning and not having the time. It's a whole different profession than many people go. And yes, they might know, but I can tell you, one teacher said to me, brand new this year, fresh out of college, I asked her how it was going. She did get a job with the school system, product of the school system, graduated from Killam. I asked her, I guess it was the end of September, I said, how is it going? She said, it's really hard. I said, how are you doing? Because I was concerned with, this is hard. And she said, I knew it was going to be hard when I chose it, but I never realized it was going to be this rough. She goes, this is the time. She goes, I don't ever go home before 6 o'clock. And when I get home, and she goes, I just didn't know how much it entailed until I actually got in it. And it's just become a profession that we're asking more and more of our students, our teachers, to provide for them. So I think it's going to help the students in the long run. And I know it's hard on the parents, but I also think in the long run it'll help the parents too, because it's helping their kids, because the teachers are preparing. So that's just my.
One last add-on, Mrs. Weems, and then we will vote.
Yeah, I mean, just for future discussion, I agree, but, I mean, we're guilty of piling new stuff, new canvas, new this, new programs, everything from downtown is the greatest and best thing, and we change, and we expect so much. The answer is take something off the plate, don't load so much on the plate, but we'll give you that extra half day to learn the 10,000 new things that we required of you this year. So that discussion needs to definitely happen.
All right. I think we'll all agree, we'll all agree on future discussion, and for the purpose of tonight, the motion on the floor, which we have a second for, if all in favor, show a raised hand, please.
And I vote yes.
We have 8 ayes.
All opposed, show a raised hand.
And we have 3 nays. The motion did pass.
Okay. So action item D, Policy Review Committee recommendations. So before I'm planning to call for a motion so that we don't have to have 24 votes, but before I do so, I will ask, is there any one of these that you do want pulled out for discussion of these bylaws and one appendix? All right, hearing none, then I call for a motion to approve all the Policy Review Committee recommendations with one vote. Is there a second? Mrs. Hughes? Okay, well, I already asked about any to be discussed, so instead we'll just ask for a vote. All in favor of approving these? I mean, do I need to read them all? No. Bylaws 1 through 24. 24, that sounds good. Okay, so all in favor, show a raised hand, please.
Ms. Owens, how do you vote?
And Appendix C.
Say that one more time.
I vote yes.
Thank you. Madam Chair, we have a unanimous vote.
Thank you all. Okay, who would like to start us off with committee or board reports? Okay, I have to
Mrs.
remember.
Wright,
Yes.
if I may interrupt, it's not quite on a committee report. While discussing the move to the the Holland Road Annex, we did mention, we've talked a couple times, most of us know what's happening. There will be signage put up. The notices will be appropriate, but now would also be a good time, next couple of meetings, to remind folks that the school board will, along with the school administration, be moving to the Holland Roads Annex, Holland Road Annex, starting December. We're already making that move, but the meetings will start taking place over there. So we're encouraging the public to please check the meeting notices to make sure the meetings that you may normally have come here for will be over there. And we'll have that on those notices, but just to notice the public that will be starting to happen in the next couple of weeks.
And can you confirm, is it December 15th? Is that the meeting
I
date?
think 13th is our next
13th.
meeting, and I think it's my understanding we're planning for that. Is that correct?
So the notice to the public is plan on Holland Road Annex for the December 13th unless you hear otherwise.
But other committee meetings that we have, normally here student discipline meetings, will also probably start happening in that building. So just to the public know, we will have notice in the front door if you show up here, but
Continue
just a
to
reminder.
monitor locations for all school board related meetings. That sounds like it captures it all. Mrs. Anderson?
Just for those people in our audience who may be hearing us and saying, Holland Road Annex, what is that? It is the old Kellam High School, which we have now named the Holland Road Annex. So
Nimmo
that's where we're gonna
and
start
Holland
having our
Road.
meetings, December 13th, for a few
Okay.
months. But the other thing is I think it behooves us to let the public understand why we are vacating this building. I don't think that's been put out to the public, why that's happening and what's the need for it and why are we leaving here and going over to the annex so that we can do work on this building. Could anybody explain that, please?
It has been shared, but the meetings go back quite a few months ago, so this bears repeating. Mm-hmm.
Yes, so there was a brief to the school board.
I get it.
There's significant HVAC work. There's been a phased approach to the work that we've done for the HVAC, the air in the building, heating and cooling. And so there's substantial work that we can't keep employees in place while that work is going on. So we're going to temporarily move the staff over to Holland Road Annex for the duration of that work and then move back. It's
And
on the
some
order of
electrical issues as well, correct?
There's a host of work going on. The primary reason that we need to get everybody out of the building is all the overhead work that's being done on the HVAC system, but there's a lot of other work that goes in with it as well.
Thank you. I just thought that needed some clarification for the public. Thank you.
And you are correct. We're planning for the 13th of December. There's always risk, and we're monitoring what that risk is as we move forward, but we're planning for the 13th of December.
All right, thank you. Last call? Mrs. Weems?
Yes, a few times a year, the SEAC, Special Education Advisory Committee, meets at nighttime so that working folks may attend. And this month, it is November 21st. That's a Monday night at 6:30 at the Parks and Rec Administration Building right down the road. SEAC, 6:30, the 21st.
Thank you. Mrs. Franklin?
Just a reminder that Gifted CAC is meeting Monday night at 6:30 as well.
Mrs. Riggs?
And yes, PRC is meeting tomorrow at 9 o'clock instead of at 11. So we're meeting at 9 in here. No, in the
The little conference
the
room.
little
next door.
conference room beside the chambers.
Okay, Mrs. Franklin? From Mrs. Felton?
Yes, I'd like to announce that the PPMC meeting will be at 1 p.m. on November the 10th. One second. My calendar has its own mind. On the 14th, I'm sorry, it is. PPMC will be on the 14th of November. Thank you, Ms. Franklin.
So I think that's that, and we're now ready to transition into closed session. So Mrs. Melnick will be reading us into closed. Is Deb here?
I move that the school board recess into closed session in accordance with the exemptions to open meetings law set forth in Code of Virginia, Section 2.2-3711, to deliberate on the following matters. Discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of any public body, and evaluation of performance of departments or schools of public institutions of higher education, where such evaluation will necessarily involve discussion of the performance of specific individuals. Consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members or consultants pertaining to actual or probable litigation, where such consultation or briefing in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body. For the purposes of this subdivision, probable litigation means litigation that has been specifically threatened or on which the public body or its legal counsel has a reasonable basis to believe will be commenced by or against a known party. Nothing in this subdivision shall be construed to permit the closure of a meeting merely because an attorney representing the public body is in attendance or is consulted on a matter. Consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel. Nothing in this subdivision shall be construed to permit the closure of a meeting merely because an attorney representing the public body is in attendance or is consulted on a matter, namely to discuss school board attorney evaluation instrument.
Second. Mrs. Riggs, all in favor, show a raised hand, please.
Ms. Owens, how do you vote?
Do I abstain? Can I vote yes? I mean, I'm not going into the closed.
Okay, thank you. So we have 10 ayes to go into closed session. Whereas the school board of the city of Virginia Beach has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And whereas section 2.2-3712D of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by this school board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the school board of the city of Virginia Beach hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, 1, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification applies. And 2, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered. I need a motion.
Motion to approve, Mrs. Manning, and a second, Mrs. Riggs. All in favor, show a raised hand, please.
We have 10 ayes, the motion passed.
Okay, now we have a vote to introduce.
So the vote would most likely be approve the school board attorney evaluation
An
instrument.
All right, I move that the school board approve the school board attorney evaluation instrument as
presented.
Yep, as presented in the closed session.
Second, Mrs.
No, you motioned. Okay.
You made the motion, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Second,
You're
Mrs.
right.
Anderson.
I'm so
Okay.
sorry.
All in favor to show your approval, a raised hand, please.
We have 10 ayes, the motion passed.
So that concludes our business for the evening, and this meeting is formally adjourned.